because local election laws don't allow it. Now the Justice Department is reportedly asking at least 9 states for copies of the voter rolls. Now the Washington Post says state officials say at least 2 have turned them over to the administration. The reporting also claims 2 DOJ attorneys are also asking states to share information about voters with the federal government. With that, let's welcome in our legal panel. David Gelman is a defense attorney at Gelman Law, and Vinoo is a former prosecutor. Welcome to you both. Thanks for coming on. All right, David, I think we just started the basics. Does the federal government have the ability to get access to these state voter rolls?
Well, under the Voting Rights Act, the DOJ does have the ability and the right to ask states if there are any claims of voter irregularities, i.e., voter suppression or anything like that. So if there are any claims about that, yeah, they can go and ask to see the voter logs, see the machines, inspect different machines and how the process is going in that state or in that particular town. And if the state and the towns do not actually comply with that, then what the DOJ will have to do is they're going to have to get a judge to sign an order stating that the state must comply with the DOJ. So there are mechanisms for the DOJ to do so, but there have to be claims of irregularities first.
Yeah, Vinoo, the Washington Post, which first reported this story, spoke with a Republican clerk in the report in Colorado's Weld County who said, quote, "That's a hard stop for me. Nobody gets access to my voting equipment for security reasons," end quote. What are your thoughts on their comment there? As David weighed in on that, it seems that there already is pushback, Vinoo.
Well, let's take a step back here. You got to look to the Constitution. Article 1, Section 4, Clause 1 of the Election Clause allows states to have initial authority regarding the framework for American elections. It gives Congress the power to adjust these rules. So there's nothing in the Constitution that allows the executive branch, i.e. the president or the Department of Justice, to alter or look at elections. Now, they can come in, conduct an investigation. They can ask the states for it, but it takes out, actually it's Congress that has to be able to change the rules or adjust the rules. So certainly the Colorado clerk is within his rights to say no one else is going to do that. Now Congress would have to step in, and with the Republican Congress, President Trump should be able to, make sure that, that if he has concerns about how elections are conducted, then there should be some additional oversight over the state election committees.
Sure. So it sounds like hey, can you help us out? Can we all work together sort of situation to make sure that everything's legit? You would hope that there would be some agreement or at least willingness to do so. We'll see what's going to happen in Colorado specifically. But I also just wanted to ask you, David, about that executive order that President Trump had signed, right? He wanted to make sure that only Americans were voting in American elections. How does the EO sort of play into this desire from the Trump administration to make sure everything's good to go?
Hey, the president signed the executive order, Emma, and he's exactly right. You are only allowed to vote in elections if you are an American citizen, if you are legally here. And obviously, we know that there's quite a bit of illegals that are not here legally in this country right now. Obviously, that executive order is getting pushed back left and right, more from the left, obviously. But this has again, Voter Registration Act. That's exactly why the DOJ is allowed under the Voters Registration Act to go in and investigate. And look, I'm not saying they're going to just take machines and take voter rolls and and do what they got to do with them. No, they're investigating, and if anything needs to happen from there, then actions can be done later on, probably with a court order again. But again, voter registration, it's very key in the United States. That's why we always have to have safe elections. So that's what the DOJ is going to be trying to do here, if in fact they get the court orders to go forward. But the legal immigrants who are voting, again, that's a no-no, and that's why there's an EO on it.
Yeah, Vinoo, President Trump has long raised doubts, as we all know, about the electoral system. He continues to assert that his 2020 loss to Joe Biden was due to fraud, electoral fraud. He even posted on Truth Social on Saturday, standing his ground on voter fraud claims, saying, and here it is, quote, the 2020 election was rigged and stolen, and they tried to do the same in 2024. Final thoughts, Vinoo.
Well, let's look back at what President Biden did in 2021. He issued an executive order that directed federal agencies to take steps to boost voter regulation. Republicans criticize that as federal overreach, right? So, the question then becomes, is Trump overreaching? And so you got to ask yourself, okay, if the next president is not a Republican, is not Donald Trump or a Republican, well, what will the next Democratic president do? So it's all about looking at this thing in a way that looks at history. I mean, Congress is going to pass the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, the SAVE Act, which would requires, proof of citizenship before voting. So, Trump may be ahead of the curve on this by looking at the elections. We'll see. But remember to keep perspective on history here and what President Biden did.
All right. We'll leave it there, gentlemen. Thanks so much for coming on, sharing your analysis. Vinoo and David, we do appreciate it.
Thanks, Emma and Sean.
Got it. A lot of other developing